She wasn't supposed to survive. She wasn't supposed to come back. And yet, Amara stood in the center of his office, holding the only thing that could break him, their baby. Reid's heart raced, his empire meaningless in the face of her silent defiance. How had he missed the truth for all these years? Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. James' Family Channel. Today, we have a story that will touch your heart like nothing else. It's filled with love, sacrifice, betrayal, and hope. A journey of a mother's courage, a father's redemption, and a little life that changes everything. I promise you, you won't be able to hold back your tears. So make sure you watch this story all the way to the end. Every moment matters, and every twist will leave you holding your heart in suspense. Grab a tissue, get comfortable, and let's dive into a story that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The doors of the 80th floor office groaned under their weight, echoing faintly over the distant rumble of thunder outside. Rain lashed the glass walls, each drop a tiny percussion against the city skyline. Inside the room was a different kind of storm, tense, cold, suffocating. Reid Harrison's chair was too large, too imposing, yet he seemed a part of it. As immovable as the desk that held the divorce papers before him. He didn't move when the doors opened. He didn't even blink. Tiffany, poised at his side, let her fingers hover over the polished surface, drumming in a rhythm that was equal parts mockery and nervous anticipation. Her grey eyes sparkled with the thrill of power, the knowledge that she, at least, had something Reid didn't certainty. Yet even she felt it, the shift in the room the moment Amara appeared. Amara stepped in quietly, her presence commanding without a sound. The tiny bundle in her arms shifted, a small sigh escaping it. But her focus never wavered. The sharp purple of her dress cut through the muted greys of the office, a vivid slash of defiance. Her eyes, dark and steady, held a quiet fire, a certainty that unnerved even Reid. He allowed himself a smirk, one slow, measured, as though testing her will. "I see you brought the proof of your betrayal," he said, voice low, sharp, slicing through the tension. "Eyes here to watch you sign away the Harrison name." Amara's lips pressed together. She didn't look away. Her voice, calm and deliberate, carried over the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. "He won't cry, Reid. He's spent 9 months learning how to be silent, just like I did." The room felt suspended. Tiffany's breath caught. Her silk, draped hand clutched at her hip instinctively. Lightning arced across the skyline, illuminating the stark, cold lines of the office. The sound of thunder followed, low and threatening, as if echoing Amara's words. Reid leaned back, the leather of his chair creaking beneath him. His blue eyes narrowed, cold and unreadable. "Silent," he repeated, a hint of mockery lacing the syllable. "Is that what you call this bravery? Or is it just another trick?" Amara's gaze didn't falter. Her arms hugged the bundle tighter, a subtle tension beneath her calm exterior. "Bravery, Reid," she said, voice soft but unmistakable. "And love. Something you'll never understand." Tiffany's smile faltered. She took a small step back, suddenly aware of the fragile balance she had assumed she controlled. The office no longer felt like her stage. It was a courtroom where power was irrelevant. Amara moved toward the table, each step deliberate. The baby shifted slightly, a tiny hand curling against her chest. Reid's fingers drummed against the desk, a silent echo of his irritation and disbelief. He was accustomed to control of people, of situations, of outcomes. But this was uncharted territory. A flash of lightning illuminated the city beyond, a silver sheet of light across Amara's determined face. She didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. She placed the bundle carefully on the edge of the table, eyes never leaving Reid's. "You always thought you knew me," she said, voice steady, soft, but firm. "But I've never been yours to command." "Not truly." Reid's jaw tightened. The smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of curiosity, or maybe irritation. He leaned forward slightly, as if drawn by a force he didn't recognize. A magnetic pull that was equal parts anger and fascination. Tiffany stepped closer to him, trying to assert her presence, but her words came out clipped, defensive. Don't let her make this harder than it already is," she said, though her tone betrayed uncertainty. Amara's eyes flicked toward Tiffany briefly, and in that glance was a quiet assertion. She had no fear, no need for approval, and no intention of bowing to anyone's judgment. Reid's voice cut through the thick tension. "Do you even realize what you've walked into?" he asked, calm but with an edge of warning. "This isn't a game, Amara. You think this little stunt changes anything?" She smiled faintly, almost pityingly, and shook her head. "I don't play games, Reid. And I don't stunt, I survive. You should try it sometime." The storm outside mirrored the electricity in the room. Lightning reflected off the marble floor and the polished surfaces, creating fleeting shadows that made the office feel alive, aware. Each crack of thunder seemed to punctuate Amara's words, like nature itself acknowledging her defiance. Reid's hands clenched into fists on the desk. He had fought every battle in his life with precision, logic, and power. Yet here was something he could not predict, could not calculate, a quiet, unyielding woman standing in the eye of his storm, demanding nothing, yet commanding everything. Tiffany's hand faltered on the desk. She was suddenly small, her perfectly constructed confidence melting in the presence of a raw, undeniable force. She had underestimated the quiet wife, the overlooked partner, the woman she had assumed was weak. Amara's eyes never left Reid's. She placed the bundle down carefully, adjusting the tiny blanket around the baby. Every movement was deliberate, measured, controlled. Even in her vulnerability, she held power, an invisible authority that challenged Reid more than any business negotiation ever had. Reid exhaled slowly, almost imperceptibly. He leaned back again, the leather chair creaking beneath him. For the first time, he didn't feel like the Ice King, the untouchable force of Manhattan's elite. He felt exposed, vulnerable, in a way he had long since forgotten. "You're testing me," he said finally, voice low, careful, trying to reclaim some fragment of control. "Do you know what that means?" Amara tilted her head slightly, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. "I don't test," she replied. "I reveal." The words landed between them like a strike of lightning, echoing off the marble and glass. Reid's blue eyes narrowed. He studied her, searching for any hint of fear, any crack in the composure that seemed impossible. There was none. Tiffany's breath hitched. The room had shifted. It was no longer just an office or a boardroom. It was a battlefield, and she had been caught unarmed. Amara took another step closer, and with it, a faint shiver ran through the room, though it wasn't caused by the storm. It was the tension, the unspoken challenge. The quiet assertion of a woman who refused to bow. Reid's smirk returned, but it was less confident this time, more curious, more cautious. He knew something fundamental had changed, though he could not yet define it. Lightning streaked again, illuminating the room in harsh white light. Amara's eyes glinted with determination, the small bundle in her arms rocking gently. Every line of her body radiated strength, quiet yet undeniable. "You think you control this," she said softly, voice almost a whisper, "but you've already lost. The question is whether you'll admit it before it's too late." Reid's fingers tapped against the desk, faster this time, betraying a growing unease. The divorce papers lay untouched. The storm outside raged, matching the chaos now building inside him. He had faced competitors, threats, betrayals, but never a quiet, unwavering resolve like this. Tiffany's perfume mingled with the electric air, her carefully curated world unraveling with every word Amara spoke. She looked at Reid, expecting him to react, to assert dominance, but he remained frozen, caught between disbelief and an unfamiliar emotion, fear. Amara adjusted the blanket, securing the baby closer to her. She did not speak, but her gaze carried weight, authority, and a silent message that Reid could neither ignore nor dismiss. For the first time in his life, Reid Harrison felt the walls of his empire narrowing, not around him, but against him. He was on the defensive in a battle he had not anticipated, and the rules were entirely unknown. The storm outside cracked violently, thunder rolling through the sky, echoing inside the office. Amara's eyes locked with Reid's. Her silence was louder than any words could have been. And in that silence, the first fracture of the Ice King's control appeared. As the baby stirred slightly in Amara's arms, Reid's lips parted to speak, but before he could, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the office into sudden darkness, leaving only the storm and the faint echo of a heartbeat between them. The office remained dark, the sudden blackout leaving only the faint flicker of stormlight from the windows. Rain hammered against the glass like a war drum. Amara's hands moved with quiet certainty as she set the baby down in the carrier on the desk. The tiny bundle stirred once, a fragile sigh, and then settled, as though sensing the gravity of the room. She straightened, eyes fixed on the papers before her, the pen poised in her hand. Reid leaned back in his chair, the leather groaning under his weight. His blue eyes, usually unshakable, darted toward the movement. A flicker of curiosity crossing his cold expression. A smirk played on his lips, though there was tension beneath it. A subtle shift he didn't yet recognize. Tiffany's voice broke through the silence, soft yet sharp, layered with condescension. "Careful, Reid. If the baby cries, it might ruin my silk rug." Amara didn't glance at Tiffany. She didn't flinch at the mockery. Her fingers gripped the pen like a weapon of quiet defiance. The office, though plunged into darkness, felt heavier now, charged with unspoken energy. She signed the papers slowly, deliberately, each stroke a declaration. The pen's scratch across the page echoed faintly, the only sound besides the storm outside. Then, without hesitation, she pushed the 50 million check across the desk. Her movements were precise, controlled, leaving no room for argument or hesitation. "I didn't stay for the money," she said, voice soft but sharp, "and I won't leave with it." Each word landed with weight, cutting through the room like a blade. From her bag, she retrieved something small and familiar. A worn teddy bear, frayed from years of handling, softened at the edges. She placed it in the baby's lap, and for the first time, the infant stirred fully, tiny fingers brushing against the plush fabric. "I gave you the only thing you ever truly wanted, Reid," she whispered, a quiet accusation in her tone. "I hope it's enough to keep you warm in this cold office." Reid's expression faltered. The words struck a chord, though he struggled to admit it. For the first time in years, control slipped from his grasp, not through force, but through sheer unshakable truth. Arthur Penhaligon, the family lawyer who had seen Reid conquer every battlefield imaginable, shifted uneasily in his chair. His eyes, sharp and calculating, flicked from the papers to the baby, then to Amara, as if trying to piece together the calm storm she brought into the room. Amara stepped back, carefully lifting the baby from the carrier and holding him against her chest. Her movements were fluid, graceful, yet every step carried weight, each one deliberate. The storm outside mirrored the tension inside. Lightning cast fleeting shadows across the office, and the occasional thunderclap punctuated her quiet authority. Reid's fingers drummed on the desk, a reflexive tick that betrayed his inner turmoil. Tiffany shifted beside him, uneasy now, her composed exterior beginning to crack. She had underestimated Amara completely. She had assumed the quiet wife would crumble under scrutiny, would beg, would plead, and yet here she stood calm, resolute, in full control of the room's gravity. Amara's eyes flicked toward Tiffany briefly, a silent challenge in their depths. She didn't speak, but the unspoken message was clear. She feared nothing, respected no one's judgment, and bowed to no authority. Tiffany's lips parted, unsure of how to respond, and for once, she had no words that could pierce the atmosphere Amara had created. Reid leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. His smirk had faded, replaced by a flicker of curiosity, an emotion he rarely allowed himself. He studied Amara with a mixture of disbelief and irritation. "You always know how to complicate things," he said quietly. "You do this deliberately." Amara's lips curled faintly, not in amusement but in resolve. "I didn't complicate anything, Reid. I clarified. The choice is yours to see it, or ignore it. But don't mistake my clarity for weakness." Arthur cleared his throat softly, leaning toward Reid. "She's offering more than documents," he said, voice low. "She's giving you the truth, something you've ignored while you built walls around yourself." Reid's hand clenched into a fist. He wanted to push back, to assert dominance, but every instinct, he had fought against the undeniable presence of reality. Amara wasn't negotiating. She wasn't pleading. She was revealing, and revelation was something he could neither manipulate nor control. The baby cooed softly, a tiny sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silent tension of the office. Reid's eyes flicked down involuntarily. The child's presence, small and fragile, held more power than Tiffany, more power than the papers, more power than any corporate contract he had ever signed. Amara adjusted the blanket, tucking the infant closer to her chest. "This isn't about signatures or money," she said softly, though her voice carried through the space with authority. "This is about life, Reid. And you've underestimated that for too long." The storm outside intensified. Sheets of rain splattered against the glass walls, thunder booming through the room. It was as if the world itself recognized the gravity of what was happening. Reid's heartbeat quickened, a subtle reminder that he was human, fallible, vulnerable in ways he had long ignored. Tiffany shifted again, her composed posture cracking under the weight of the moment. She had always believed in power, in money, in appearances. But she had never faced someone who required nothing from her yet commanded everything. Amara had changed the rules without speaking them aloud. Reid's jaw tightened. He leaned back again, eyes narrowing slightly. "You think you've won," he said, tone low and controlled, trying to reclaim the authority slipping through his fingers. "You think a signature, a gesture, a toy, that this changes anything." Amara met his gaze evenly, the infant safe against her chest. "I never thought I had to win," she said. "I only had to survive. And now, I'm giving you a chance to see what truly matters." Arthur shifted in his seat, uneasy but respectful. He knew Reid's world, the world of deals, threats, and cold calculations. And yet, nothing in that world prepared him for this quiet, unyielding woman standing before the most powerful man in New York, giving him a gift he could not purchase. Reid's hands twitched, hovering over the desk. The weight of years of pride, of arrogance pressed down on him. Yet it was powerless against the simple, human act of truth Amara had just delivered. She had stripped away his defenses with no words louder than those necessary. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the office in stark white light. Shadows flickered across Amara's determined face, the infant's small fingers curling around her thumb. Reid blinked, his mind racing, trying to grasp what had just occurred. He realized, too late, that he had been playing a game he did not understand. Amara turned toward the door, each step deliberate. Her foot caught on the frame, but she steadied herself without a glance back. It was a simple act, but in that motion was defiance, strength, and control. Reid wanted to speak, to stop her, to assert power, but words failed him. He was silent, stunned, caught in a moment he could neither dominate nor escape. The storm outside raged in tandem with the tension inside. Thunder rolled as if mocking Reid's frozen posture. The office, dark and electric, held its breath, awaiting the next move. Even Tiffany remained silent, powerless to affect the unfolding reality. Arthur cleared his throat again, cautious. "Reid," he said slowly, "sometimes the hardest lessons aren't learned in courtrooms or boardrooms. Sometimes they're learned in moments like this." Reid's lips parted. He wanted to argue, to deflect, to reclaim control. But the words stuck in his throat. The room seemed to shrink around him, filled with the weight of truth he hadn't anticipated. Amara's eyes held his unwavering, steady. The baby stirred again, soft coos echoing in the room. And for the first time, Reid Harrison felt the walls of his world cracking, not because someone had attacked them, but because someone had simply refused to play by the rules he knew. Every instinct he had screamed to fight, to dominate, to reclaim control. Yet a quiet, piercing part of him understood he could do neither. Amara's calm, deliberate presence had undone him entirely. Tiffany shifted, stepping back. The silk of her dress whispered against the floor. She realized, with a chill in her heart, that nothing she had built around Reid's world mattered in this moment. Amara had created a reality where power, money, and status were irrelevant. The lights flickered slightly, casting eerie shadows across the office, then steadied again. The storm outside roared in approval or accusation. Reid's hands hovered above the papers, and for the first time, He felt truly exposed. Amara reached the door. Her hand lingered on the handle. She paused, just long enough for Reid to finally meet her gaze fully, truly. There was no fear, no hesitation. Only the quiet certainty of a woman who had suffered, survived, and emerged stronger than he could ever have anticipated. And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. The room seemed to exhale, heavy and empty, leaving Reid Harrison alone with the echo of reality he had refused to face. As the office fell silent once more, the faint sound of the baby's cooing echoed from the carrier, though it was empty. Reid's eyes widened, heart hammering, as he realized the bundle had vanished. Reid's chest heaved as he tried to process what had just happened. One moment, the office was heavy with control. The next, it had become a hall of mirrors where every illusion he had ever built shattered. He laughed, hollow and bitter, a sound that made the storm outside seem almost gentle in comparison. Pathetic. He muttered under his breath, his voice low, controlled, but trembling with something unfamiliar, disbelief, confusion, perhaps the faintest hint of fear. "You think you're clever, Amara?" No answer came, of course. The room was empty. The carrier was gone. And yet, every nerve in Reid's body screamed that the child wasn't simply missing. It had been moved deliberately, purposefully. Arthur Penhaligon's hands trembled slightly as he reached for a file. The elderly lawyer's fingers were steady when needed. But this was a moment that demanded human reaction, raw and uncontrolled. With a sudden, forceful motion, he slammed the medical file on the desk. The sound cracked through the office, louder than any thunder outside, and sent Reid's untouched glass of scotch spilling across the polished wood. Dark liquid crept toward the edge, unnoticed as all attention shifted.
"Oh, arrogant boy!"
Arthur roared, voice trembling but commanding, shaking with a mixture of anger and sorrow.
"You think you're a genius? You're blind!"
Reid froze mid-motion, eyes narrowing. Blind. He had always prided himself on vision, insight, on seeing what no one else could. Yet in that instant, the truth struck him with the weight of a falling skyscraper. He had seen nothing. Not the struggle. Not the sacrifice. Not the very life he had been so sure was gone. Arthur opened the file and laid it across the desk, images and medical notes spilling into the faint light. Reid leaned forward, the tremor in his hands betraying the calm he wanted to maintain. His sharp mind raced, flipping through the evidence he had once considered inconsequential, now revealing an entire life he had ignored. Amara hadn't betrayed him. She hadn't cheated. Every whisper, every accusation that had poisoned his trust, every rumor that had fractured his love lies. Carefully constructed, cruel lies that had taken root in his mind. She wasn't hiding a lover. Arthur's voice cracked, heavy with grief. She was hiding stage 4 lymphoma. She refused radiation. She refused treatment because it would have killed your son. She spent her pregnancy coughing up blood, alone, in a small, dark apartment, so your child could have a chance to live. Reid's breath caught, sharp and uneven. His hands trembled as he pressed them to the desk, trying to anchor himself. Coughing up blood. Alone. Every calculated assumption he had made about her weakness, her supposed infidelity, his so-called justification for hatred, they were all false. Tiffany gasped softly, a sound fragile as thin glass. Her grey eyes widened in disbelief, and for the first time, Reid noticed the stark reality. She was powerless here. All her charm, Her status, her poised demeanor, useless against the undeniable force of truth. Reid's icy demeanor faltered. A flicker of human vulnerability crossed his face, brief but undeniable. The Ice King, who had crushed rivals and manipulated markets without remorse, now sat exposed, raw and unguarded. Arthur leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper, as if the gravity of the revelation demanded reverence. She suffered for you, Reid, every day, every hour. She hid her pain because she believed. She believed in what you would never see, the legacy of your bloodline, the future of your child. The words struck him like lightning, sharper than any storm outside. Reid's mind raced, images of Amara during her pregnancy flashing unbidden, pale, alone, silent, yet enduring. Every accusation he had hurled, every insult he had spat, every plan he had made to erase her from his life. Hauntingly wrong. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to beg for a second chance, but his throat tightened. A lump that refused to dissolve. He had underestimated her. He had underestimated love. He had underestimated courage. The room remained tense. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, as if waiting for him to finally recognize the weight of what had been hidden in plain sight. Tiffany's voice trembled. "Ill all this time?" She whispered, not daring to move closer. She felt like a stranger in the office, an intruder in a story she hadn't been allowed to write. Arthur's hands rested on the table, still shaking, as he gave Reid a long, steady look. "You called her a traitor," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "And she risked everything for you, for him." His hand gestured toward the empty space where the carrier had been, the silent reminder of the life that hung in the balance. Reid's blue eyes went wide. For the first time, he saw what he had lost, not just a woman, but a lifetime, a future, a child he had assumed he understood, now revealed as a miracle he hadn't earned. He felt rage bubbling under the surface, not at Amara, but at himself, at his blindness, at the years wasted in arrogance and pride. His chest heaved with a force he couldn't control. He wanted to scream, to punch, to destroy something tangible, anything to release the storm within. Arthur's voice cut through, calm yet firm. "It's not too late to make it right, Reid. But only if you see the truth, truly see it." The room felt small, suffocating. Reid's mind raced, revisiting every choice, every word, every insult. He realized that control, money, titles, they meant nothing here. Nothing compared to the weight of sacrifice, of love, of survival. He sank into his chair, head in his hands, trying to process. Each heartbeat was thunderous, echoing the storm outside. For the first time, Reid Harrison understood what it meant to be powerless, not against rivals or competitors, but against truth itself. Arthur reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a photograph of Amara during her pregnancy. Her face was pale, eyes closed. Fingers curled protectively around her belly. Reid's breath caught. Every line, every shadow on her skin spoke of suffering, of endurance, of a strength he had ignored. Tears burned in his eyes. Unbidden, unwanted. He wiped them away angrily, frustration twisting into guilt. How could he have been so blind, so cruel? Tiffany's face mirrored shock, disbelief, and unease. For the first time, she looked small, irrelevant, powerless. She had been swept aside by a reality she hadn't even known existed. Reid slowly lifted his gaze, eyes meeting Arthur's. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he demanded, voice shaking. "Why didn't I know?" Arthur's lips tightened. Because some truths you had to see for yourself. The weight of those words sank into Reid like stones into water. The office, dark and storm, battered, felt heavier, oppressive. The reality of Amara's suffering, the brilliance of her endurance, the child that had vanished moments ago. It all converged into a single, unbearable truth. Reid rose from his chair abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. He moved to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked city. Every light, every flicker, every shadow seemed trivial in comparison to the truth he had been blind to. A single bolt of lightning illuminated the skyline, reflecting in his eyes. He realized he had spent a lifetime building walls, crushing threats, controlling people, only to be reminded that the strongest force he had ever faced was silent, patient, unyielding. The sound of a soft, deliberate knock on the door startled him. He turned quickly, expecting Tiffany or Arthur. But the hallway remained empty. Only the echo of his own heartbeat answered. Reid's hands trembled as he reached for the file, images of Amara's secret struggles flashing in his mind. He felt hollow, cold, yet alive in a way he hadn't been before. Every instinct he had screamed to find her, to see her, to reclaim what he had dismissed. But a part of him hesitated, fearful of what he might uncover next, fearful of confronting the full magnitude of his mistakes. The office felt suspended in time, the storm outside a mirror to the tempest within. Reid Harrison, Ice King of Manhattan, faced the first true crack in his armor, and the realization was almost unbearable. He whispered to himself, voice low and raw, I was wrong. Everything. The silence that followed was profound, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. The future had shifted, and he had no map for what came next. A soft, familiar coo echoed from the shadows near the desk. Reid spun around, heart racing, and froze. The baby was there. But so was a small, folded note tucked beneath the carrier. He picked it up, hands shaking, and read a single line written in Amara's handwriting. Do you truly deserve to see him? Reid's fingers trembled as he held the small note in his hand. The words, simple yet devastating, burned into his mind. Do you truly deserve to see him? He read it again, slower this time, hoping to decipher some hidden meaning, some clue to Amara's silence. But the note offered nothing but the stark truth. He had no claim, no control, no right. Only a choice to act, or to remain frozen in his own guilt. The storm outside thundered again, relentless. Rain pounded the windows, sliding down in rivulets that distorted the city skyline into a haze of gray and gold. Lightning flickered, illuminating the empty office and casting long, distorted shadows across the polished floors. Reid swallowed hard, heart hammering. He had faced hurricanes of wealth and power, corporate takeovers, betrayals, yet nothing had ever left him feeling this exposed, this small, this vulnerable. Before he could dwell longer on the note, the doors opened. The sound sliced through the tension like a scalpel. Reid barely registered the figure at first, drawn to the movement more than the person. Then she stepped into the dim, storm-flooded office, Dr. Lena Cruz. Her presence was calm but assertive, each step deliberate, her eyes sharp and observant. She was young, yet her aura carried authority. Compassion radiated from her, unspoken but undeniable. Reid's chest tightened as he took in her features' high cheekbones, dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail, and eyes that seemed to read everything before a word was spoken. She carried a clipboard. But it wasn't the clipboard that commanded attention. It was the quiet confidence in the way she moved, the way she held herself, as though the weight of knowledge alone gave her power. "She saved this baby for you," Dr. Cruz said, voice calm, steady, unwavering. There was no accusation in her tone, no judgment, only fact. "But she's in critical condition. If you truly want to understand, you need to come now." Reid's throat went dry. Every muscle in his body tensed, adrenaline and fear colliding violently. He felt his hands curl into fists at his sides, not in anger, but in desperation. For the first time, power meant nothing. Money meant nothing. Status, influence, and control, all of it seemed trivial compared to the fragile life of a child he barely knew, and the woman who had risked everything for that life. Tiffany's hand faltered on his arm, her grip weakening. Her carefully constructed world, the one where she manipulated, commanded, and won through charm, crumbled under the weight of truth. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Even she realized this was beyond negotiation, beyond influence. This wasn't a battle for a signature or a board seat. It was life and death. Reid didn't hesitate. His mind, usually a fortress of calculation and control, yielded instantly to instinct. He followed Elena, moving past Tiffany, past the desk, past everything he had known. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside him, heart pounding, lungs tight, every sense sharpened. Rain splattered against the windows, a relentless rhythm that matched his steps. As they left the office, Reid's eyes darted to every shadow, every corner, every reflection in the marble floors. He couldn't shake the thought that time had been stolen from him, that each second wasted in anger, arrogance, or pride had brought them closer to this moment of reckoning. He had thought he controlled life, controlled outcomes. Now he realized control had been an illusion. Elena led him down the long, gleaming corridor. Her steps were deliberate, measured, guiding him without a word of explanation until they reached the service elevator. The hum of the machinery, the soft whirring of the cables, the faint echo of the storm outside. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence of the building. "Where is she?" Reid finally asked, voice rough, strained. A mixture of fear and guilt. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. The urgency in his tone carried the weight of years of pride crashing down. "She's stable. For now," Elena said, keeping her eyes forward, voice calm, carefully measured. "But critical, Reid. You need to see her before it's too late. No distractions, no delays. She made every decision for the child and for you. But she can't hold on forever." Reid swallowed hard, the taste of bile rising in his mouth. The floor beneath him felt unreal, as though he was walking through a dream where nothing he had built mattered. Nothing. Money, power, prestige, they were meaningless in the face of life, suffering, and sacrifice. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, enclosing them in a small, moving metal box. Reid's reflection stared back at him, in the polished walls pale, wide-eyed, every line in his face etched with shock and guilt. He had always considered himself untouchable, untarnished by emotions. Now, he felt every ounce of humanity crash down upon him at once. Elena didn't speak. Her silence was deliberate, comforting, commanding. It gave him space to confront his thoughts, his panic, his guilt. And yet, her eyes never left him, as though silently reminding him that he had a responsibility beyond the chaos of his own feelings. The ride felt interminable. Reid's fingers twitched at his sides. He wanted to run, to scream, to tear through the hospital corridors to reach Amara. Yet he forced himself to breathe, just a little, listening to the hum of the elevator, the faint, distant rolling of thunder. Every second mattered. Every moment could mean the difference between life and death. Finally, the doors slid open onto the brightly lit hallway of the hospital. The antiseptic smell hit him immediately, harsh, clinical, and sharp against the storm still raging outside. Nurses passed by silently, eyes flicking briefly toward him. Sensing the tension that radiated from his every movement, Reid's heartbeat was deafening. He could feel it in his chest, his throat, his temples. The note he had read, the words of Amara's challenge, burned in his mind. Do you truly deserve to see him? Did he? Could he? Did he deserve anything after years of arrogance, of pride, of cruelty? Elena led him swiftly down the corridor, passing rooms, doctors, and patients who moved in slow, unaware motion. She moved with purpose, her hand guiding him subtly, never letting him falter. Reid followed, moving on instinct alone, thoughts a jumble of fear, regret, and a growing understanding of what Amara had endured. The baby, the child, the tiny life she had protected at every cost. Reid's chest tightened, a cold knot of guilt and awe. He realized he had no right to feel anger, no right to feel pride. He had only responsibility, only the chance to act, to witness, to understand. Elena stopped outside a room at the end of the hall. She glanced at him, steadying, preparing him. She's fighting, she said quietly, voice firm. But she needs you to see her, Reid. No hesitation, no doubt. Just be there. That's all she's asking. Reid nodded, swallowing hard. His fingers itched, trembling slightly as he reached for the door handle. Every instinct told him to pause, to prepare, to brace, but he knew she had already endured more than he ever could. He opened the door slowly. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting shadows across the room. Machines beeped, ventilators hissed softly. Monitors displaying life in numbers and lines that barely conveyed the fragility of the human body. And there she was, Amara, pale, fragile, yet unmistakably herself. Her eyes fluttered open as if sensing him. The baby rested safely in a bassinet beside her. She hadn't spoken, hadn't moved more than necessary, yet in that small, quiet room, she held more power than Reid ever had in all of Manhattan. He took a step forward, voice thick, breaking. Mara. Her eyes met his, a spark of recognition, a challenge, and a question. No words were needed. Everything he needed to understand was in her gaze. The baby stirred suddenly, tiny hands stretching toward him. Amara's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly, and she whispered, barely audible over the machines, "If you fail now, he will know only a stranger as a father." The ICU was cold, sterile, and unforgiving. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a persistent white glare that made shadows sharp, cruel, slicing through the room with clarity. The scent of antiseptic was heavy, clinging to the back of Reid's throat, making each breath taste metallic and urgent. He stepped forward cautiously, as though the very air carried a weight too heavy to bear. In the center of the room, surrounded by monitors and wires that blinked and hissed with life and death, lay Amara. Her once vibrant brown skin was pale, ashen under the clinical lights, stretched taut over fragile bones. Her long dark hair lay damp against the pillow, a halo of neglect and suffering. She looked impossibly small, yet Reid could still see the strength in her jaw, the stubborn fire behind her closed eyes. He fell to his knees beside the plastic bed. The sound of the machines, the constant beeping, and the hiss of oxygen filled the silence, yet all he could hear was the deafening echo of his own guilt. Tears streamed unbidden down his cheeks, tracing paths he could not stop. He grabbed her hands, frail as paper, trembling beneath his rough fingers.
I'll give it all away! Amara, please!
His voice broke, rough and ragged. I'll sell the company,
The planes, the penthouse. I'll be a nobody.
just don't leave me with this guilt. His words were raw, desperate, tumbling out in a torrent. A confession decades in the making. He didn't care who heard him. There was only her, only the truth of the moment, only the weight of his failure pressing down. Her eyes fluttered open, hazel flecks shimmering against a pale background, recognition fragile, fleeting, but unmistakable. The baby, is he safe? She whispered, voice hoarse and shallow. Does he have a father, or just a CEO? Reid's hands shook violently as he lifted the ventilator tubes, fumbling with the machinery that kept her alive. Every second was a battle against panic, guilt, and despair. He had been blind, arrogant, cruel. And now he faced the stark reality. Amara had given everything, suffered everything, for him and their child. He leaned close, eyes brimming with tears, and whispered, I am here. I will protect him. I swear. I will never fail him, and I won't fail you either. His words trembled in the sterile air. Desperate attempts to stitch together a life he had shattered. The baby stirred in the bassinet beside her. Reid's heart thudded, wild and relentless. Tiny fists clenched and unclenched, eyes barely open, innocent and unaware of the storm surrounding him. A sudden, sharp pang of terror shot through Reid. He realized how easily he could have lost this moment forever, lost the chance to see the life she had fought so hard to preserve. Amara's hand twitched, reaching toward him. Reid leaned closer, holding her fragile fingers in his own. The ventilator hissed rhythmically, punctuating the tension, a stark reminder of how delicate her hold on life truly was. I did it for him, she whispered, voice raspy but resolute. Every moment, every pain. I endured it for his life, for our future. Her words were weak, but each syllable carried weight, piercing through the walls of Reid's self-imposed armor. Reid's chest ached with guilt and love, intertwining into something almost unbearable. He kissed her hand, trembling, whispering, I see you now, I see everything, and I will never let you or him down again. Ducka. Elena Cruz appeared at the doorway, clipboard in hand, her expression calm but urgent. He's stable. For now, she said softly, eyes flicking between Reid and Amara. But her condition could deteriorate in minutes. You must understand the gravity. This is not just a battle for survival. This is a battle for time. Reid nodded, barely hearing her words. All he could focus on was Amara, the baby, the fragile threads of life he had come to rely upon more than any boardroom, any deal, any empire. He pressed his forehead against hers lightly, feeling her shallow breaths against his skin. A nurse entered silently, checking the monitors, adjusting tubes, moving with careful precision. Every sound seemed amplified. The beep of the heart monitor, the soft squeak of shoes on tile, the click of the ventilator. Reid flinched at each one, a symphony of tension and fear that underscored the fragility of their world in that moment. "Amara, can you hear me?" he whispered, voice breaking. "Can you hold on? Please, just a little longer. I'll do everything, I'll give everything for you, for him." She coughed softly, a fragile, rattling sound that tore at his chest. Her eyes met his, filled with a mix of pain, defiance, and something that looked almost like hope. She tried to smile but failed, the effort too great for her weakened body. Yet in that failure, Reid saw something magnificent: resilience. He glanced at the baby, tiny fists clenching and unclenching, hair damp against the forehead, eyes opening wider. The child seemed to sense his presence, alert yet fragile. The weight of innocence in a world that had already proven cruel. Reid swallowed hard, tears streaking his face. He realized that his entire existence had been preparation for this moment, yet he had squandered it with arrogance, pride, and blindness. Elena stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "Reid, you need to accept the reality. She survived 9 months of chemotherapy, hiding her condition so he could live. But she's not invincible. Not anymore. You cannot fix this with wealth, with power, with promises. You need to be present. Truly present." Reid nodded slowly, finally understanding. Presence. This was more than money, more than status, more than control. He needed to stand beside her, not dominate, not decide, not control. Just be. Just witness. Just protect. The machines beeped in a relentless rhythm, marking every second. Reid held Amara's hand, feeling the fragile pulse beneath his fingers, the warmth that remained despite her pale complexion. He whispered promises over and over the hiss of oxygen and the occasional beeping alarm, hoping his words could reach her. Minutes passed, or hours, he couldn't tell. The world outside the ICU ceased to exist. Only the ventilator, the monitors, the baby, and Amara's fragile form remained. He watched every twitch, every blink, every shallow breath, memorizing each movement as if committing her existence to memory. Then, a subtle shift. A twitch of her lips, a tightening of her hand in his. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible. Yet Reid recognized it instantly. She was fighting. The fire inside her had not been extinguished. Not yet. Reid pressed his forehead against hers again, tears spilling freely. "I am here," he whispered, voice raw. "I am not leaving. I swear I am not leaving you or him." The baby stirred once more, tiny eyes wide. He let out a soft cry, fragile and imperfect, yet somehow miraculous. Reid reached down, gently cradling the child against his chest. Heat, life, and fragility pressed against him, reminding him that the world was fragile, yet repairable, if he acted with courage and humility. Amara's eyes fluttered open again. She looked at him, recognition momentary, fleeting, yet unmistakable. "Promise me," she rasped. "Promise me you will be better for him, for us." "I swear," he said, voice breaking. "I swear on everything I am. I will be better. I will protect both of you. I will earn your trust every day." The machines beeped again, steady, rhythmic, life pulsing through fragile wires. Reid held the child closer, chest tight, eyes brimming with tears. He realized that nothing he had ever controlled mattered now. Control was an illusion. Only love, presence, and commitment mattered. And then the heart monitor beeped irregularly. A sharp, jarring tone cut through the room. Reid froze, panic clawing at him. The baby's small hand twitched violently. Amara's chest rose unevenly. Elena rushed forward, hands steady but urgent. "Stay calm, Reid. She's still with us, but you need to be ready. Every second counts." Reid's blue eyes met hers, wide, desperate, and terrified. He had always believed he could command outcomes, control fate. Now he realized he could do nothing but be present and hope it was enough. The ICU's relentless alarms faded into memory, replaced by the quieter, subtler rhythms of recovery. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in Reid's chest, a reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. The monitors now beeped steadily, lifelines regular, unthreatening, and yet every sound was a sharp reminder of fragility. Amara stirred under the thin hospital blanket, her dark eyes opening slightly, hazel flecks shining with a faint fire. She coughed softly, weak but deliberate, her hand twitching toward the edge of the bed. Reid was there instantly, catching her fingers in his own, feeling their frailty, the delicate pulse of her strength still lingering. "You're awake," he whispered, voice thick, raw. He could barely believe she was still here, that the woman who had endured months of hidden suffering was beginning to return. Amara's lips curved faintly, a shadow of a smile. "I'm not gone yet," she rasped. Don't forget that." Her voice was weak, every syllable fragile, yet carried the unmistakable weight of defiance. Reid nodded, swallowing hard. His fingers refused to leave hers. Every moment without them felt like stepping over a chasm. Every second she lingered was a chance to reclaim trust, to rebuild what he had shattered. Days passed in a blur of routine, exhaustion, and small victories. Reid shadowed her every step, learning patience in ways no boardroom or Wall Street battle had ever taught him. He learned to watch, to wait, to notice the little things, the faint tremor in her hand when she reached for water, the way her eyes scanned the room for comfort, the moments of pain she tried to hide from him. Arthur visited quietly, usually in the early afternoon, bringing files filled with medical updates, schedules, and notes about the baby's development. The elderly lawyer's presence was steady, grounding, a reminder of responsibility without judgment. He would leave the files on the bedside table with a soft, "She's making progress," or "Milestones aren't just about numbers, Reid. They're about presence." Reid listened, absorbing the lessons like parched earth drinking rain. The words were simple, almost mundane, but they carried a weight he hadn't known existed. Presence, patience, care. He had wielded power all his life, commanding respect with a nod or a glance, crushing opposition with contracts and manipulation. Here, none of that mattered. Evenings became their shared ritual. Reid would sit in the small recliner, beside her bed, holding their newborn son in his arms. The child's soft coos and tiny movements demanded focus, patience, and tenderness. Reid read to him, fumbling at first, voice breaking over words he had never imagined reading aloud. Bedtime stories, simple tales of wonder and courage, became a bridge between the life he had taken for granted and the responsibility he now embraced. Amara watched silently, her eyes steady, observing him. She saw the transformation in small increments. The way he held the baby, careful and deliberate. The subtle adjustments he made to her pillows. The quiet way he listened when she spoke, even if her words were halting, weak. She saw humility growing, not forced, not performative, but genuine, rooted in fear, guilt, and a desire to earn what he had thrown away. One evening, as the sun dipped low, and painted the ICU walls in pale amber light. Amara whispered from her bed, voice soft but defiant, "You'll never be allowed to control me with wealth or fear again." Reid paused mid-motion, holding the tiny child close, heart pounding. His blue eyes met hers, glistening with tears, reflecting a mixture of shame and resolve. "I know," he whispered back, voice breaking. "I know. I just want to be worthy of you." She studied him, gauging sincerity, reading the raw emotion that he could no longer hide. For the first time, Reid wasn't speaking as a CEO, a manipulator, or a man accustomed to command. He was speaking as himself, vulnerable, exposed, and utterly reliant on her forgiveness. The baby stirred, small fists clenching as if sensing the tension in the room. Reid adjusted him gently, rocking back and forth, his gaze flicking between mother and son. Each heartbeat, each tiny movement, was a reminder that life was fragile, precious, and unrepeatable. Arthur appeared quietly in the doorway, eyes soft, clipboard in hand. "He's hitting milestones," he said, voice low. "But progress is fragile. She's fragile. And yet, she's teaching you more than any court or contract ever could." Reid's chest tightened. Arthur's words echoed in his mind, presence over power, care over control. He had lived decades in a fortress of arrogance, pride, and dominance. Now, every lesson was earned in whispered cries, tremulous hands, and sleepless nights. Amara's lips moved slightly. Reid leaned closer, heart racing. "What is it?" he asked softly. "Promise me," she murmured, voice faint. "Promise me you'll be patient. Not just with him, but with me. Don't try to fix everything at once. Don't rush me." Reid nodded solemnly. "Promise," he said, voice low and sincere. "I'll earn it every day." The room grew quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft breaths of mother and child. Time felt suspended, fragile, as if every second was both a gift and a warning. That night, Reid stayed past visiting hours, cradling the baby in his arms while Amara rested. He traced tiny fingers, memorized every detail, whispered soft promises he wasn't sure she could hear. The storm outside had faded, but the storm within him raged on, a tempest of guilt, love, fear, and determination, all entwined in a single, inescapable truth. He could never undo the past, but he could fight for the future. A subtle shift occurred over the next few days. Amara's strength returned incrementally. A hand would reach for his when she needed support. A faint smile would curve her lips, fleeting but radiant. Reid responded in kind, careful not to overstep, learning patience in real, tangible ways. Every moment was a negotiation, a dance between fear and hope, fragility and resilience. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the blinds, Amara sat upright for the first time, weak but purposeful. She looked at Reid, eyes sharp and assessing. "You're learning," she said softly. "Not fast enough, but learning." "I will be better," he replied, voice firm but gentle. "I will never stop trying. I promise you and him." The baby cooed, reaching a tiny hand toward him. Reid held him close, chest tight, a new understanding settling over him. Responsibility was no longer a concept. It was a living, breathing entity, demanding attention, devotion, and love. And then, without warning, a soft chime sounded from a nearby monitor, followed by a faint, irregular rhythm in the baby's heartbeat. Reid froze, panic clawing upward. But Amara's eyes met his, steady, unwavering. She raised a frail hand, gripping his lightly. "Stay calm," she whispered. You can't falter now. Reid's chest heaved, blue eyes wide, heart hammering. He realized in that instant that this wasn't just about wealth, status, or control. It was about presence, vigilance, love, and the stark reality that life could be taken from them in a single, fleeting second. The monitor beeped irregularly again. Reid's gaze snapped to the baby, tiny chest rising unevenly. A single thought slammed into him with the force of a tidal wave. If he falters now, they could lose him, and her, forever. The morning sun spilled softly over the small garden, painting everything in gold and green. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the sterile hospital rooms and harsh fluorescent lights Reid had come to know. He knelt on the soft grass, fingers deftly weaving petals into a crown, careful, deliberate, aware of each movement. Each flower placed was a meditation, a silent apology, a promise woven in color. Amara sat in the chair across from him. Their son perched in her lap, giggling softly as he reached for the blades of grass, fascinated by the simple world around him. His laughter was light, pure, unaware of the battles that had raged to bring him here. The sound pierced Reid's heart, delicate and profound, a reminder of what mattered above all else. This isn't about power, Amara said firmly, her voice calm, resonant, yet carrying the weight of authority only she could wield. She tilted her head slightly, eyes reflecting sunlight, scanning him, reading him. My love isn't a trophy. You don't earn it with signatures or money. You earn it every day. Reid's hands froze mid-motion over the crown, petals quivering between his fingers. He swallowed hard, the words settling into him like a hammer striking cold steel. Every empire he had built, every contract he had signed, every battle he had won, it meant nothing compared to the quiet, unspoken test before him. Love, trust, and presence. Nothing else mattered. He exhaled slowly, leaning forward to place the crown gently on her head. I've never wanted anything more than this, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. I'll spend every day proving it. The words were simple, but carried decades of pride and arrogance shed in one single, vulnerable breath. Their son clapped his tiny hands, delighted by the petals brushing against his fingers. Reid smiled through the tears that threatened to fall. The weight of everything he had lost and regained pressing against his chest. This small, fragile moment felt larger than any boardroom, any stock market victory, any deal inked in steel and blood. Amara's eyes softened, but they did not lose their strength. She leaned forward, placing a gentle hand over his, grounding him. I will watch, said a subtle challenge lacing her calm tone. Every day. I'll see if you truly understand what it means to love, to protect, and to be present. No shortcuts. No hiding behind money, no excuses. Reid nodded solemnly, swallowing hard. I know, he said, voice low but certain. I won't hide. I won't run. I'll be here every day earning it. The garden was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city, the chirping of birds, and the soft giggle of their son. Reid's chest ached with a bittersweet mix of relief, love, and lingering guilt. A reminder that the path ahead was not over. The scars of the past were still etched in their lives, waiting to test them at every turn. Suddenly, the garden gate creaked. Reid looked up sharply, instincts flaring. His blue eyes met the figure approaching, a woman, a delivery uniform, holding a letter carefully. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, and stamped with the Harrison family crest. Even from a distance, it radiated importance, authority, and a subtle threat. Amara's hand tightened slightly around their son, sensing the tension before Reid did. He rose slowly, careful, but every muscle in his body was taut, alert. This was no ordinary delivery. Nothing from the Harrisons ever was. The woman extended the letter with a professional, almost hesitant hand. "For Mr. Reid Harrison," she said, voice neutral, but carrying a weight. "Signed and sealed by the family office. They requested it reach you directly." Reid's pulse quickened. His fingers hovered over the envelope, hesitant. As though touching it would ignite a chain of consequences he could not predict. He could feel the history of the Harrisons pressing down on him, the legacy, the power, the secrets. For a moment, the weight of his past life collided violently with the fragile, tender present. Amara leaned slightly forward, her dark eyes sharp. "What is it?" she asked softly, voice even but alert. She had faced storms of her own, but she could sense when a new one approached, like the subtle shift in air before a sudden gust. Reid didn't answer immediately. He traced the embossed crest with a trembling finger. There was an almost imperceptible smell of aged paper, ink, and something else. Authority, history, judgment. Every instinct told him to pause, to prepare, to brace. The garden felt suddenly smaller. The warmth of sunlight diminished. Even their son seemed to sense the subtle change, quieting in Amara's lap, fingers clutching the hem of her dress. Reid's mind raced. Harrison's secrets were never idle. Every envelope, every letter, every document had consequences. He tore the seal carefully, deliberately, feeling the paper give way beneath his fingers. Inside, a single sheet of parchment lay, neat, precise, and cold. He unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the first lines. The handwriting was familiar, elegant, but chilling in its certainty, words meant to provoke thought, emotion, and action. Amara leaned closer, watching his expression, sensing the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. Reid on, feeling his chest tighten with each sentence. The letter referenced family debts, unspoken obligations, and a clause long hidden in Harrison law. A test of loyalty, trust, and character that only he could face now, and that could threaten the fragile life they were building. "This isn't," he began, voice tight. But Amara shook her head slightly, silently telling him to continue, to process, to prepare. The letter contained an unexpected twist, a secret account, a hidden clause, and the revelation that the Harrisons had known of Amara's pregnancy all along. The betrayal was not hers, nor his, but theirs, the family legacy demanding control, manipulation, and obedience. Reid's fingers trembled as he finished reading. He glanced at Amara, searching for guidance, reassurance, or strength. She met his eyes, calm, firm, her expression unreadable. "You can't run from this," she said softly, almost a whisper. "But you can choose how to face it. Every day, every moment, every choice. You decide who you are for him, and for me." Reid swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of the moment pressing down on him. He realized the garden, their son, their fragile peace. It could all be threatened by secrets they had yet to uncover. The delivery woman shifted slightly, waiting, silent, professional, a ghost of authority standing at the threshold. Reid knew she was more than a messenger. She was a signal, a herald of new tests, new challenges, new truths. The envelope still lay open in his hands. The words burned into his mind. The Harrisons were watching, evaluating, testing, And now, they had given him a new choice: step forward or falter. He looked at Amara, her dark eyes unwavering. Their son's tiny hands reached for the petals of the crown on her head. Reid's chest tightened. The future, delicate and unsteady, demanded courage he had not yet fully realized. Reid folded the letter slowly, lips tight. A chill ran down his spine as he whispered, "Amara, they've sent a test. And it's going to change everything." The garden gate creaked again, shadows lengthened, and from the corner of his eye, he saw someone he never expected, watching them from beyond the fence. Reid's blue eyes locked onto the shadowy figure beyond the gate. His chest tightened, a mix of dread and instinct flooding through him. He stepped slowly forward, fingers brushing Amara's hand for reassurance. Their son gurgled softly, oblivious, as if sensing the tension but trusting the warmth of his mother's lap. "Who is it?" Amara whispered, voice steady, eyes scanning the perimeter. She didn't flinch, didn't panic. Her strength had returned, tempered by months of survival and endurance. Yet she remained cautious, alert. Reid's lips pressed into a thin line. He clenched the letter in his hand, the Harrison seal pressing against his palm. The message inside was clear: a final test, a hidden ultimatum, a reminder of the legacy he had left behind. He had escaped the corporate battlefield before, but the family's gaze was relentless, unforgiving. The figure stepped closer, revealing herself to be a young woman with sharp features and the same cold authority Reid remembered from the Harrison boardroom. She carried an envelope in her hands, smaller but heavy with expectation. "Mr. Harrison," she said, voice calm but weighted. "Your family requests an immediate response." Reid's jaw tightened. "I am not the man I was," he said firmly, stepping in front of Amara. "And I will not be dictated to by threats, secrets, or fear." His eyes flicked toward Amara, who met his gaze with silent approval. She trusted him, not blindly, but because he had earned that trust through months of patience, humility, and presence. The woman paused, a faint smile playing on her lips. "We'll see," she said, before turning and disappearing into the shadows, leaving behind only the faint scent of authority and the metallic weight of expectation. Reid exhaled slowly, dropping the letter on the garden table. He turned to Amara, studying her expression. She was calm, composed, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity, waiting to see how he would respond. "It's not enough to survive the past," she said softly. "We have to face what comes next together. And they will come with every challenge, every secret, every test. Are you ready?" Reid knelt in front of her again, holding their son close, eyes brimming with tears. "I am," he said. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life. For you, for him, for us." The garden felt alive with quiet determination. Every blade of grass, every petal in the crown he had woven, seemed to whisper of resilience and hope. The storms of the past year, the betrayal, the pain, the near loss, had forged something stronger, something real. Their son reached for Reid's face, tiny fingers brushing against his cheek. Reid laughed softly, the sound raw, filled with relief and newfound purpose. "We will protect him," he said, voice steady now. "I swear on everything I am. No one will take him from us." "Not now, not ever." Amara reached out, placing a hand over his heart. "And I will hold you accountable," she said, tone soft but firm. I will remind you of what matters, of what love truly requires. You will be worthy, or you will fail. Reid nodded, accepting the challenge, the accountability, the weight of redemption. Every instinct, every lesson, every tear had led to this moment. The man who had once ruled with fear and power now understood love, patience, and the delicate balance of life. Days turned into weeks. Reid began to shade the habits of a CEO obsessed with control. He learned to cook, to change diapers, to soothe cries in the dead of night. He held Amara's hand through every therapy session, every doctor's appointment, every quiet moment of doubt or pain. Amara healed slowly but steadily. Her laughter returned in fragments, her strength returned in increments. She tested Reid deliberately, each question a reminder of the trust he had yet to earn fully. Every day was a challenge, but he met it head-on, learning, adapting, loving without ego. The garden became their sanctuary, a place of lessons, bonding, and quiet observation. Reid watched his son learn to crawl, then walk, then run, each step a miracle, each fall a lesson in patience, each laugh a reminder of what he had almost lost. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the yard, a letter arrived in the mail. This time it was handwritten, elegant, commanding. The Harrison family had not forgotten. They had sent a message, a final reminder of the world he had once ruled, and the tests he had yet to face. Reid read it silently, lips pressed together, expression unreadable. The letter outlined a business matter, a charitable endeavor, and a clause about succession in the family legacy. It was cold, calculated, demanding loyalty, but it also offered opportunity. He looked at Amara, her eyes steady and trusting. He understood that wealth, power, and legacy were not enemies. They were tools. Tools to build, to protect, to provide, but only if wielded with love, patience, and integrity. Reid folded the letter carefully, placing it in a drawer. He turned to Amara, kneeling before her, holding their son close. "I understand now," he said, voice firm and calm. "I don't need to rule the world to protect my family. I don't need approval to be worthy. I just need to be here, present every single day." Amara smiled faintly, the sun catching the glint in her eyes. "And that," she said, "if you's more than enough. If you continue like this, there will be no question, no doubt. Only proof." Their son reached up, grasping both their hands. Reid and Amara exchanged a glance, no words needed. They understood the unspoken. The past could not be changed, but the future was theirs to shape. Together, weeks passed. The garden blossomed with flowers, laughter, and life. The Harrison family's shadow lingered, but could no longer dictate terms. Reid had learned humility. He had learned patience. He had learned love that demanded no trophies, no signatures, no proof beyond presence and care. Amara returned to work slowly, taking small steps toward normalcy. Supported by Reid's constant presence, Reid, in turn, began rebuilding his life, not as the Ice King, but as a man who had faced the void and returned stronger, wiser, and profoundly human. One evening, as the sun set behind the city skyline, painting the garden in warm golds and deep reds, Reid knelt again, weaving another flower crown for Amara. Their son sat nearby, laughing, chasing shadows across the grass. Reid's hands were steady, deliberate, full of purpose. "I don't deserve this," he whispered, voice low, filled with awe and reverence. "I don't deserve you," your trust or him. But I will earn it every day for the rest of my life." Amara reached for his hands, holding them between hers. "Then do it," she said softly, firmly. "No excuses, no delays. Just love, presence, and honesty. Everything else will fall into place." The moment stretched, timeless, full of quiet triumph and fragile peace. Reid understood fully now. The world would test him endlessly. The legacy of his family would continue to loom. But here, in this garden, with Amara and their son, he had finally learned the true measure of life. The sun dipped completely, shadows lengthened, and for the first time in years, Reid Harrison felt the weight of power lift, not to be replaced by arrogance, but by the lightness of love, purpose, and redemption. As the city lights began to twinkle beyond the garden, a soft breeze stirred the flowers. Reid looked at Amara, their son laughing between them, and whispered, "Whatever comes next, we face it together." A faint silhouette appeared at the edge of the garden, watchful, silent, and observing. But for the first time, Reid didn't feel fear. He felt readiness. He had been tested, broken, and rebuilt, and now he was finally whole.